Yes, brothers and sisters, if you happen to have stumbled into our dear church somewhere in July, I was probably reading from the 6th chapter of St. John. And if you, for whatever reason, missed all the weeks between then and now, I'm still reading from the 6th chapter of St. John. It's just how things are laid out. It's the Bread of Life Discourse. We cut it into, I believe, 6 pieces, if you include the feeding of the 5,000. And slowly and painstakingly go through every step of the development of this little debate that Jesus has with the crowd that collects around him after he has managed to feed all 5,000 of them with just a few loaves of bread and a couple of fish. And we kind of have to go work our way through the whole idea of food and heavenly food, of heavenly wisdom and earthly wisdom, or is that better said, heavenly foolishness, which then becomes earthly wisdom, or is that, I forget. St. Paul has a whole dissertation in 1 Corinthians on how the wisdom of earthly minds is, to a lot of extent, just kind of foolishness in heaven. But the foolishness of heaven far surpasses all that people here on earth can think or do. What we read today from the 6th chapter of St. John, from that discourse, really is about faith, folks. I mean, it is about faith, pure and simple. It's not about wisdom, even though we've read from the book of wisdom. We have heard from St. Paul's admonitions in Ephesians for us to, in wisdom live and sing songs to God. And I love that little graphic I dug up, the little stick figures all made up into musical instruments, and people make music to the heart of God. What better of a wisdom can a human being have than to have within them the idea that life is to a lot of extent about making music to the heart of God. Somehow, how many of you actually like music? Let's just be honest here. How many of you actually like music? And in all honesty, how many of you can live without it? Okay. It's an admission. Church, unfortunately for some of you, is full of music because of none other than St. Paul, who somewhere was in a dungeon, and he and his fellow travelers decided to sing songs in the night. Must have been quite some songs, because they broke open the prison doors and freed everybody. Music to the heart of God. It is sung by the church all through the world, and we sang the opening song in cathedrals and in quiet places. They sing music to the heart of God, because there comes a moment when faith has to say, you know what, I ain't got an argument for being around, but I sure have a song. That's kind of faith. It used to be said, he who plants a garden has faith. That came out of the times when you planted your garden and it grew your vegetables for the root cellar, and also times before supermarkets and stuff. This year we always set out a garden, except for this year. We needed the space to set up graduation then, so we didn't bother, because we knew we needed the space. So we didn't plant a garden. Are we eating badly? Didn't somebody say the other day that meat comes from Kroger's? Vegetables come from Kroger's too, apparently. I guess he who doesn't plant a garden does it also in faith that somehow some fool somewhere has planted a field and has been so kind as to enter the produce into the food chain. But ultimately, eating sort of is an act of faith, or not today's meal. Today's meal is already on the table. You don't have to have faith for it. Today's meal is already handled. Tomorrow, next week. Those are different plates of food, folks. So maybe there's a certain amount of wisdom that retains itself in our living. But faith is ultimately what we live in before God. In the Gospel of John, there's a number of places where people have the chance and the audacity to debate with Jesus. One of them is Nicodemus, who's told of a new life from above, and he asks, how can this happen? Somewhere, Jesus talks with a woman at a well, and he says, I will give you water, living water, that will keep you from thirst. And her answer is, how can this be? You don't have a bucket, and the wells are deep. And here he is saying, I will give you sustenance that is myself, the bread that is come down from heaven, I myself. And the argument again is, how can this be? And at that point, earthly wisdom tries to grasp heavenly faith, and things they don't go necessarily off the rail, they just become complicated. And we start doing what the people in the book of John, in what we read today do. They start arguing with one another. And there was a time, and we're about to celebrate it largely 2 years from now. The Reformation is about to turn 500. You realize that? In 2017 is the 500th anniversary of the Reformation. I'm sure we will have many things to say theological about it. Some of them about the nature of the Eucharist. And we start arguing St. John, the evangelist, against St. Thomas, the prolific writer of the Middle Ages, against John Calvin, the Reformed denominations' founder, against Ulrich Zwingli, the Anabaptist hero, and Martin Luther, of course, all of them who had a long history of debating. Well, if this is Jesus that meets us in the bread and the wine that is to come from the altar, and that same thing plays itself out at altars all over Ohio and all over America and all over the world, how can this be? How can this man do this? How can this Jesus give us of himself to eat? In the end, what Martin Luther, in his final testament, he called it, said, I don't know. But my Lord said it would be so. And I believe him in so many other ways and on so many other things that if I started to doubt that he was there in the Eucharist, what would be left of me? Faith has to do some things. It has to bridge some chasms. Chasms that exist between answers of how, where, what, when, and all these kind of things that have no answer in the end. Because the answer is always God. And those answers don't get disclosed until the end. Don't get me wrong. I'm not against thinking through the faith. Matter of fact, I'm committed that we should probably think about it carefully and what implications it has. After all, making music to the heart of God is to say that it's our faith is to make music in the heart of God is an act of theology. You think about it. You think about what God has done for you and continues to do for you. You think about the resurrection of Jesus and marvel. You think about his promise that you will also rise at his call. You think about his sustenance of you in his holy word and the sacraments of baptism and Holy Communion that come to you. You think about the totality of what God has done for you in salvation, the totality of all that God is doing for you in day-to-day life and in every breath. And if you do so, what is left other than to say thank you? Or to sing to God and sorry to you who aren't that fond of song, but to sing to God songs of thanksgiving, songs of praise, songs of humility, songs of submission, songs of saying, I will come to this table because you meet me there. I come to the table where you are present. Be it this one or any other table, I come, I'll sing, and I marvel that God and I have just met, body to hand. We believe this because Jesus promised it and sealed this promise with his death on the cross, and proved it true again and again by rising from the dead and appearing to the apostles. It's one of those days, this Sunday, when we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. We celebrate his presence among us. It's not necessarily about wisdom. It's about faith, and it's about praising God. So I praise all you who come believing. Praise all you who come making music. It kind of leads the joy of the Father's heart. And we all come because we need this Jesus to know of our resurrection and of our life. Amen. Would you join